Hello, family, and welcome to today's episode of Word Rules. So today we're going to discuss what the Bible really says about marriage. Now, when the topic of marriage comes up, most people, secular and those of the faith, rightfully so, refer to the creation of Adam and Eve in the book of Genesis as a reference point for Yah's design for marriage. And while these verses provide an excellent summary of the purpose of the union between man and woman and what it was meant to accomplish, we're going to cross-reference them with an exchange between Yeshua and the Pharisees to provide insight into what Genesis chapter 2, verses 22 through 24 are really saying. Now, the first verse we're going to key on is Matthew 19 and 12. But before we examine it, let's look at the sequence of events that led to verse 12. Yeshua had just arrived into the coast of Judea, beyond the Jordan River, after traveling from Galilee. There was a crowd following him, and as they did so, he healed them. Now, the Pharisees were there as well, but not for healing. What they were looking for was an opportunity to tempt Yeshua. In Matthew 19 and 3, they asked him about divorce and whether it was right to do so for any cause. In other words, what the Pharisees were really asking was, can a man divorce his wife for whatever reason he feels like? Now, this may seem like a random question for the Pharisees to ask, but in fact, it is not. The significance of this question is that during those times, divorce was a hotly contested issue due to the fact that the Hebrews were divided into varying schools of thought depending on whom they followed. The popular school of thought was that a man could divorce his wife for pretty much anything about her that displeased him. For example, if she was a bad cook or if he simply didn't love her anymore. We see an example of Yah chastising Judah, the southern kingdom, for this in the book of Malachi chapter 2 verses 14 and 16, where he says, "And yet ye say, wherefore?" or why? "Because Yah hath been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously. Yet is she thy companion, and the wife of thy covenant. For Yah, the Elohim of Israel, saith that he hateth putting away," which to put away means to divorce. Yah hates divorce. Now, the stricter, less popular school of thought was that divorce was only to be granted if the wife committed fornication, adultery, or any other sexual sin against her husband. What the Pharisees had hoped to accomplish by asking this question was to get Yeshua to choose between one of these two schools of thought in an effort to politicize his answer and position him as an enemy of the people or the state or both. However, what Yeshua does in response is brilliant. Verse 4 of Matthew 19 reads, "Yeshua answered, Have you not read that from the beginning the Creator made them male and female?" Now again, this answer might seem as random as the original question, but I assure you it is not. The keys to understanding this verse are the definitions of the Greek words used for male and female. The Greek word used in this verse for male is arsen. The root for the word arsen is airo, which in Greek means to lift, which is a reference to one's strength. Thus, the word arsen is used to describe the man as a being of strength. The word for female in this verse is thalos, and the root of the word thalos is the, which in Greek means to suckle. When the word thalos is used for a woman, it is to describe a being with nursing bosoms. So what Yeshua had done with his answer is remind the Pharisees of the original design of man and woman, that being the strength and the nurturer. But what does this mean? The strength, the nurturer. For that, I refer you to the continuation of Yeshua's response in verse 5. "And said, For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." So what does the Creator mean when he says, "for this reason"? What reason is the Almighty referring to? To answer that, we must define another Greek word, kolaho, which is Greek for the word unite in this verse. The root word for kolaho is kola, and it means to literally glue together. Now, the mistake that many of us have made when reading verse 5 is to interpret kolaho figuratively and not literally, which has caused many to miss what Yah was telling us. What does it mean for a man to be united to or literally glued to his wife? Intercourse. In this verse, Yah is referring to the man having intercourse with his wife in order to become one flesh. But wait, let me ask you this. Does the act of intercourse between a man and a woman equate the two actually being one flesh? The answer to that is no. Now, I know this is a little confusing, but please bear with me. Even though the man has gone into the woman, they are still two separate forms of flesh. Remember, we are not speaking figuratively. We are speaking literally. So then what does Yah mean when he says the man, the being of strength, leaves his father and mother and unite to, have intercourse with, his wife, the being with nursing bosoms, and the two become one flesh? Children. The child that is produced when the man has intercourse with the woman is the one flesh that they become. The being of strength has intercourse with the being that has nursing bosoms, and the two produce a child. The reason which Yah speaks of, that a man leaves his mother and father and has intercourse with a woman, is for the production of children. This is what Yeshua wanted to remind the Pharisees of. In the ancient world, it was understood that men were to sire children, and that the purpose of marriage was to do so, which in turn creates a family, man, woman, and child. To divorce is to divide the family, subsequently tearing asunder what Yah has put together. Round one to Yeshua. Now, the Pharisees are not done yet. So in verse 7, they ask Yeshua to explain, well, why did Moses grant the ability to get a divorce in the first place if a man and a woman are not supposed to be separated? Yeshua again responds brilliantly by giving them the reason behind Moses' decision, that being the hardness of the hearts of men, which is the unwillingness to forgive. In verse 9, he goes further to add clarity to the applicability of the right of divorce and states, it is only valid in Yah's eyes in the event a woman defiles herself by way of fornication. Now, this verse is a little trickier to decipher, but can be understood based on Moses' word choice. Moses describes the woman that a man can divorce as a fornicator and not an adulterer. This is key. A fornicator in this context is a woman who has never been married but has had sex before being betrothed, or simply stated, who was not a virgin before getting married. Brief side note, the law of divorcement that Yeshua is referring to is in Deuteronomy 22nd chapter, verses 13 through 21. So Yeshua continues on by informing them that if the man divorces a woman for any other reason other than what he just described, he himself has committed the sin of adultery. And with this answer, Yeshua puts an end to the Pharisees' questioning for the moment. So after hearing this exchange, the disciples are now confused. And in verse 10, they question if marriage is even worth the trouble. And it is in Yeshua's response where we find the answer to our original question, that being, what is the purpose of marriage? Now, because of the crudeness of men's minds, Yeshua gives an esoteric answer to his disciples' question in verse 12. And it reads, for there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb. And there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men. And there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. So as with our previous examples, we will look at the Greek word used for eunuch, which is eunacious. Eunacious is derived from two root Greek words, echo and eune. Echo in Greek means to hold, and eune means bed. So to be a eunuch in biblical terms is to hold, or to not include, the bed. This is a reference to an individual that cannot have sexual relations. So if we reread verse 12 with our new understanding, it will read as such. For there are some that cannot have sex, which were so born from their mother's womb. And there are some that cannot have sex, which were made unable to have sex of men. And there be some that cannot have sex, which have made themselves not able to have sex, for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. So to sum up what Yeshua is saying, if you are born with defective genitalia, you cannot have sex. If you have had your genitalia removed via castration, you cannot have sex. And if you have taken a vow to Yah of abstinence, you cannot have sex. However, if neither of these scenarios apply to you, then refer back to the command that the Father gave men in Genesis, the 2nd chapter, which is that a man is to find a woman to marry and protect and go into her and to produce children. Now, I will make my final point and close with the book of Malachi, chapter 2, verse 15. And it reads, Has not Yah made them one, having a portion of the Spirit? And why one? Because he seeks, that being Yah himself, godly offspring. Thus, family, the purpose of marriage, as decreed by the Most High Yah, is not love, nor is it any form of sentiment based in emotion. It is the coming together of a man and a woman for the production of children, which, in his eyes, constitutes a family. And it is with the production of children that the Spirit of Yah continues to dwell among men. Be blessed, family. Hallelujah.